So to start with, I want to say how grateful I am that you were a big part of intentional metalsmithing because, really intentional metalsmithing is really about empowering people and, understanding who they are and really building their own work. Like you and I, we were in this industry where people are just kind of like making pieces like the teachers, it's really about, building their own brand, finding their own voice, who really have a strong vision of their own work through good or through bad. And, sometimes to get there, it's like, it's not always a straight, direct path, So it's really interesting. So anyway, that's why, for me, you were really important for me to have you here. And when I first met, so for people watching this, oh my gosh, you guys, I showed up at Tucson and I was doing ice resin and Robert had a room right next to me and he had a big sign with his work on there. And I was like, oh my God, what is this?
I remember that day. I was trying to, as you're saying, I was like, what show was this? I remember this. Yeah, this was, I remember that. I remember the moment I met you and I had heard your name so many times, but I never knew what you looked like. So when you walked up to me, I think I immediately looked down at your name badge and then like my heart kind of sank because I was so new in the game. And that year was the first year, that was like my breakout year. And when I met you, I was like, my heart kind of sank a little bit because, to me, you're like up in this pedestal, like, oh, it's Susan.
That's so funny. Well, that was a really cool statement. Okay. So you were shaking in your boots, right? To show up and show your work.
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah. So that was like I said, that was my kind of my breakout year. And it all happened so fast. So like I'd been making jewelry for, I want to say 10 years before that. And that year was the first year that I actually got into one of the bigger shows. And that was the first year I taught. And that's the first year that, I started meeting some of these names in the industry. And from that, for 4 years after that, it kind of just snowballed and it was like going down a hill very fast. And kind of got the speed wobbles a little bit, but
yeah, I can imagine. Well, okay, so how long were you in your like you pretty much, it sounds like this is usually what I say to people too: go in and close your door, don't get on Pinterest. So don't get on Pinterest, stop looking at other people's work, stop, because it makes you feel like you're not good enough, right? So you must have, what was your process? Did you like go into your studio and just build what you wanted to do, or what was your process?
Yeah, so in the beginning, the way it worked out, really briefly, I started off cutting cabochons, and there was a lapidary club in town, and they taught me how to cut cabochons. Well, I had all these cabochons, and I didn't know what to do with them. That's how it started off. So I like rocks and minerals. Well, then somebody taught me how to wire wrap. A customer, I was laying carpet in their home, and they're wire wrapping. So I watched the lady wire wrap. I went home, bought some wire, and I wire wrapped. So started off wire wrapping. And then as I slowly started to teach myself how to metalsmith through magazines and online videos, initially I started looking at other people's work. So I would constantly look at other people's work that I liked. So it was like Kit Carson, Andy Cooperman, Harold O'Connor, very like contemporary, very earthy, nature inspired work. And I started mimicking that work a little bit. I still like some of their techniques and some of the roughness and archaicness of it, but I started picking up little things. And but the beauty of it is that I was self-taught, so I taught myself how to metalsmith. So my own kind of my own style really was able to come out. I found that I've seen when other people learn or they take apprenticeships or they go to school and spend a lot of time with certain instructors, their work tends to mimic their work quite a bit. I didn't have that. I didn't have that luxury because I was working a full-time job in construction. I had 2 young boys. I had a disabled wife at home. So I didn't have time to take any classes or workshops. So I just kind of fiddled around and I just, and I think, so I was thinking about this morning. So my work kind of evolved. My work is very archaic, very tribalistic, very ethnic, very raw, right? And it started off that way because I didn't know any better. I didn't know how to make things clean. I didn't know how to make things polished. I was using construction tools, construction.
Oh, wow. Cool.
I was using very, very rudimentary tools, just anything I get my hands on. Well, my work was very raw. but I tend to like that anyways. I like, in nature, a lot of things are raw, broken branches, broken leaves. They're broken and damaged and kind of rough, right? Well, I like that. And as my work grew, it kind of morphed into that. It was a necessity to be so raw in the beginning, but then as I learned how to refine things, I still like them raw. So I
Yeah.
don't do a lot of like real fine cleanups. I don't do high polishes with the buffing machine behind me. I rarely use that. I like them very raw and archaic. So that's how my style evolved.
Wow. Oh my God. I love that statement. No wonder why I've been so drawn to it, because, it's like uh, this, the nomadic tool set that I always talk about. Like, look at that incredible book that was published by Tim McRae on these West African artists. So it's like, because you're not going to Rio Grande and buying every latest tool, you're having to put your own hand in your work more so. And that's how you're getting your uniqueness.
Oh yeah.
Oh
So
my gosh, you notice it.
I
Yeah.
was using, like, to get textures. I would go to like yard sales and I would just buy old hammers that were just rusted and dinged up, and I would just bang on the metal with that, with all the pits and divots. I go out to the sidewalk and I texture the metal on the rough concrete because it has the sand texture. I didn't have the big buffing machines. I didn't have, certain things I didn't have good files. So I wasn't able to really refine it, but I knew in my mind through some of these videos that I'd watched some of these people in these very, rural areas in third world countries making beautiful jewelry with just a handful of tools that were, like a railroad spike they would make into like a punch or something, just very rudimentary things. And I'm thinking, well, if they can do it with that, then I can do it. Hand me a rock and a piece of silver, and I'll be able to make something.
Oh my God, I
I'll be able to make
love
something.
that. We have to include a rock in the metalsmithing tool set now, right?
Right.
Oh my God, Robert, I love that. That is so amazing. And it's like, you've had a Rio Grande published your work. And I mean, he's had his work in Rio Grande, you've had your work in gallery. So, I mean, Robert is well known. And like he's saying, so quickly you got to be well known. It's like you came out with your work, and because it was unusual, everybody was hitting you up at one time, and it's like when I saw your work, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to push through the crowds to get in there to try to meet this guy. You know what I mean?
And
So it is hard though. It's hard to, did you feel like it was hard to all of a sudden get all this attention on you?
it was, yeah, it was, it was kind of a double-edged sword, I think, because um, I knew what I wanted to be. I knew that I wanted those things. I knew that I wanted to be published in Lapidary Journal. I knew I wanted to be in magazines. I knew those things were that I wanted to achieve. And when it happened, I thought I was going to have to go after these magazines, and I was so afraid to actually approach them. So I didn't want to. I was afraid. I had all this fear and anxiety that I would be denied, right? But when I started teaching, and it all became because of one promoter. Actually, it happened because Richard Sally. So
Oh,
Richard Sally threw my name in the hat one day. This promoter needed another artist, and Richard was following me on Instagram, and then he put my name in the hat, and they contacted me, and I was still afraid to do it, and I was going to back out. I said yes, and I was going to back out of the show, and then it was that first show, and then I called Richard and I said, Richard, I'm having a lot of apprehension about this. I'm very nervous. I don't think I'm qualified for this, and he came to my studio, and we talked, him and his wife, and he just told me that, that I have something to offer that's a little bit unique.
oh, good.
And I kind of, so then when it happened, so when that year, people started, and I didn't realize, so then people were coming up to me and talking to me, and I guess people had been following me, and it happened so fast that it was kind of overwhelming, I want to say, because I didn't know how to say no.
Mhm.
So when the offers started coming in, I started saying yes to everything because I thought I needed to, and I thought I needed to do that to chase the notoriety and to make the income, and it was slightly detrimental to me, to be honest. Because like I said yes to everything, and a lot of things I probably should have said no to, because it took me on a path that wasn't my original path. I was going down this way. I knew what I wanted, but then I veered off, and I veered off so far that it was hard to come back to my art. It was a lot of teaching. It was a lot of time, because there's so much time involved in getting these workshops ready. The photographs, making the jewelry, the projects, writing up the handouts, the insurance policies.
Yeah.
And then I kind of lost myself a little bit in my art, I want to say. I just didn't have time to make the things that to keep going down the path that I was going, because I was constantly reinventing my work, and pushing the limits of what I could do. Well, that's all stopped. And I can see my work was progressing. I can look at the photographs, and I was progressing all this way. And then I can see the time that I started teaching, my work became the same. And it didn't really progress. It was the same stuff over and over again, but kind of just redone in a different way. So that part was detrimental to me. But looking back, I wouldn't change a thing. It was all that teaching was good for me. It's big growth, and I met a lot of wonderful people. So that was fantastic. Still is.
Wow, oh my God. Well, that's super exciting. I mean, it really is true. It's like I'm listening to your story. It's like, I can completely understand what you're saying. So have you been able to, so COVID happened, did that kind of stop you in your tracks and finally you had time? Did you have time to like go inward and like realize like what's real,
Man,
like
I had to reinvent myself. So when COVID hit, I had a bunch of shows. So I started stacking up shows. I started stacking up workshops. So I would drive to all of my workshops across the country. So I'd pack up my truck and trailer, and I would drive across the country. And that cost a lot of money, hotels. So I would stack up, if I was going to, say, Philadelphia, well, I would try to book a bunch of classes on the way there and on the way back. So I was doing like 4 to 5, 6, sometimes 6 workshops in one trip. So I'd be gone for a month and a half straight. Well, when COVID came, I think I had like 5 workshops booked up.
Yeah.
And everything started getting canceled. So all these shows started getting canceled. And I had put out a bunch of money at that point, because you got to buy all these materials and all these tools and booking hotels and certain things you can't get the money back on and blah, blah, blah. So they all got canceled pretty much. There was one holdout that just got rescheduled. And well, that was my livelihood. It got to the point to where I stopped making and selling jewelry, and I was teaching workshops, and that was the main income. That and making and selling tools. So I had all these tools made up that I bought all the materials to make them, and it kicked me right in the teeth. There was that first year, I think I lost I think it was like $60,000 or something like that.
Oh, wow. Even though I own some of your tools, by the way, they're really nice. But even though you made your tools, you still ended up losing money that year.
Yeah. Well, in that aspect, the aspect of the workshops and all the money I was sold, tools and the jewelry that I sell, that was all gone. But I quickly had to reinvent myself. So I started making instructional videos on how to use my tools, because I already had the tools made, right? So I started selling the tools, and then I started making instructional videos on just how to make jewelry. So I made 3 videos that kept me afloat. I put those out on Podia, and those really kept me afloat through the main part of COVID. And then I was making ends meet. I was paying the bills, stuff like that, but I wasn't really making any extra money at that point. And then I just got into tool making, and I did that a few times, having some sales, and that kept me afloat. And then I got into making hats. So like towards the end of it, I saw all these women wearing these hats, and I just got a bright idea. So let's put some jewelry on the hats. And see what that does. So.
Oh my God. Well, this is like, it's so much part of the whole thing. It's like to go out and live your life authentically. There's ups and downs, and there's like, to survive and be able to stay an artist and to be able to stay a profound artist, really with a voice. It's like, I just have a feeling about you right now. It's like, I have a feeling that, your work was like, if you're saying that your work was stagnant for a little bit, it's like, you seem like you're so clear, and you seem in such a good place, and you need now, with all those lessons behind you, your character is profound, and I'm going to be really excited to see what you're building.
And that's another thing too. So like this last year, I've been I've been having all these apprehensions. I almost thought about just giving it up and then getting a normal job. I was like, maybe I could be a plumber. Maybe I can, and I started talking to some people, and they're like, well, what do you love doing? I said, I love making jewelry. And they said, what are you passionate about? Jewelry. And how long are you doing it? For X amount of years. They go, well, do that. Like I I could probably make good money out of being a plumber, but now at that point, I'm just chasing money. And
Yes.
for me, chasing money is, it's not, it's not the right thing to do for me.
Okay. So do you feel like that was a turning point for you? It's like, did you realize it? And with jewelry, or with teaching, you could start chasing money too. So I love that statement because, to live your life, like you were saying, when you showed up at Tucson, you thought you'd have to chase the editors, but then you found you just showed up with your work in a great place and they came to you.
Yeah, they were chasing me.
Yes,
I
right.
kept telling them no.
Right.
Like,
So
come on,
yeah.
come on.
Yeah. So it's like get in that good place, to really get in that good place with your work and feel filled up with it. And you don't have to chase anything. Things are going to come to
Oh
you.
yeah. So there's
Yeah.
a motto or a mantra I heard many years ago, but I still have it memorized in my head. And someone said, follow your bliss and everything will come after. So like if I just do what I love and I learn and grow and become, good at it, then everything else will come after. Just do what I love, do it well, and then it'll come to me. People
Yes.
will want my work. They'll want me to do things, and the money's that just comes after. It's a bonus. It's a cherry on top of
Yes. Yes.
I have.
Yeah. I
So,
totally agree. Yes. And so I want to ask you a couple practical questions too.
yeah.
So how do you describe your work day when you're in your studio or not in your studio? Like, how are you describing your work now? Like your work day?
Uh, generally when so we'll talk about like in the studio work day.
Okay.
So when I come in the studio to start a piece, I just come in and fire everything up, turn on my gases. And then and this has always been the way I work when I make jewelry. I never have a preconceived notion of what I'm going to make. I never say I'm going to make a bracelet, a pendant, and a ring. I never have an idea of what the concept is going to be or the design is going to be. I literally just pick up a piece of metal. I'll go, let's work with titanium today. So then I'll grab a piece of metal, titanium, and I'll just start doing things to it. And just start coloring it. All right, looks cool. And then I'll add a little more color to it. And I said, all right, that looks good. Then I'll grab a piece of silver and I said, what do I want to do with this? And I just literally start melting, hitting, hammering, filing. I get a texture, get a look, and I'll kind of look at it. I'm like, oh, well, that looks kind of cool. And then I'll do a little something else to it. And I'll be like, oh, let's add a little sprinkle here. Let's add a little dash here. And I'll just start doing different techniques. And then usually about halfway through, as I have like 3 or 4 components made up, I'll kind of lay them out on top of each other and I'll just move them around. And I'll just keep moving them around until they look something pleasing to me. And then once I get about halfway through it, I go, okay, that looks pleasing. Now it just needs this, and that. It needs to be attached this way. And then I'll go look at a stone. I go, okay, what kind of stone does it need? And then I'll either cut a stone or use a stone that I already have cut, and I'll kind of place it around and move it around until it looks good. And then when it's there, then I'll fuse everything together or solder everything together. And then I'll put it together. And then it might need a couple little extra like filings or hammerings or a little texture. And then voila, there it is. It's something.
You work as an artist. So I love that. You're actually working as a conceptual artist rather than drawing things out than mechanical.
Yeah.
Like we find in our field, there's these mechanical goldsmiths that it's about perfectionism. And then there's this creative voice that's so much fun. And you sound like, so you really enjoy the whole process.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's me. Watching the pieces grow, watching them become like what they want to be on their own. It's very organic. If I were to be like, so I've explained to people, if I were to be like a fine bench jeweler, right, where you have these conceptual mechanical pieces, where you have these drawings, these CAD drawings, whatever, right? To me, that thing's got to be perfect, right? I would not be able to sleep at night knowing that these things have to be what they were supposed to be in the beginning, right? And then if I don't achieve it, if there's nicks, scratches, whatever, I couldn't sleep at night. When I make things that are organic, broken, fractured, a little rough, a little raw, a little bit wrong, maybe a little bit just to have flaws to them, that's like me. I'm a flawed human being, right? I got rough edges, I have scars, I have, brokenness, I have, damage, and I have to learn to live with the pieces the way they are, and I have to learn how to live with myself on a day-to-day basis with those flaws. So my work is a reflection of me. It's a reflection of, there's beauty in everything, even though we come with certain baggage and certain flaws and damage. We're all beautiful. If you take the chance to look at, the time that it took to, and the journey to get to that place. So, I've been on a journey my whole life, and now I'm really choosing to deconstruct my own self, take a look at myself, and rebuild myself in a way that's beautiful to me. When I make something, I don't make it for anybody else. Literally, I don't make anything. I don't think of, well, who will like this? Will somebody buy this? Will it be good for the masses? I don't give a darn who likes my work. I make my work for me, and I have to be happy with my work.
Wow. Okay. So absolutely, that is what you're taught in art school. So to be in the place that you're at, you're gonna, there is nothing but success for you. And I love everything that you've just said right now. It's so, it's just so real. You're really building, like, this is what in intentional metalsmithing, this is exactly what I'm talking about people doing, is really building from their heart and soul, picking objects, picking stones, picking colors that they absolutely want to work with. And here you are, living proof, and so all this, what you're saying now, I'm so glad that, people are going to be able to hear this voice, because there's always everyone who feels imposter syndrome, or it's like, for you, like, you are putting so much of yourself into your work that when you go out to present your work, you're shaking. Like, if you're not shaking in your boots, you're not doing your authentic work, because you're literally putting your heart and soul out there on the table. And there's going to be people coming by who can't identify with you at all. They're going to be like, what the hell is this? Which is hard. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But then there's going to be people that are like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
It's like, you find your own tribe, you find your own people, you find your group, you get closer to finding yourself, so oh my gosh.
That's a major thing. That's been one of my major problems, is finding my size, the right size, finding my right size in this community, in this world, with my work, right? Either I was too low, I had that imposter syndrome, or I was too big. When as people started asking me, people were asking me for my autograph. They're asking me to sign these.
Yeah.
My ego went like this.
Yeah.
And I had this overinflated ego, and just like, it was too much. And then the opposite side is not thinking you're good enough, imposter syndrome. Oh, I'm not good enough. Now it's trying to find my right size, my right place in this world, and with my work. I got to learn to be modest. So a lot of what I'm working on right now, like, not just in jewelry, but in my life, is learning how to be modest. And that, to me, that means to moderate, how big I am, my low self-worth versus this giant ego. And for me, for a long time, it was these very high peaks and these very low valleys, right? So if I can learn to ride the waves like this,
yes.
I think it's going to show in my work. It's going to show in, if I go out and decide to teach again, it'll show in the way I carry myself, the way it'll show in my patience with students. I won't think that I'm too big to explain things, or I'm it's patience and moderation, and it's just finding your place amongst other peers and in your work, and just being happy with what you create. So a lot of what I do also is a lot of problem solving. So when I make the pieces, I'm doing things that I don't know how it's going to turn out, or how it's going to be constructed and put together, right? I just trust that eventually I'll figure it out, and it'll work. And that's how I live in my days these days, is like,
oh my God, I love that.
Hoping that, I go through my day, I do what I need to do, and I'm hoping that things are going to work if I just keep on trucking for that day. I'll worry about tomorrow.
So it's like you're showing up and you're being conscious. You're showing up and you're being like in your body and at your workspace.
Yeah, being at your workspace.
I'm so excited for you. I am going to be watching you.
You want to see one of my hats?
Yeah, we'd love to. And then I want to hear but I want to also hear if you have tips for anyone too. But I definitely want to see your hats. I've been watching your hats. Oh my God, they're incredible. Wow. Now wait, that is beautiful. Are you in Tucson? Are you selling these online?
I was selling them online. I kind of stepped back from making.
Oh, that's gorgeous. I love it.
I want to learn how to use my sewing machines a little bit better and get better into
Oh, wait, what are you sewing? The bands?
Yeah, I do the bands, so all the band work. Some of the hats, I'll do stitching on the hats. I'll do the inside liners. I'll do a new band inside here.
I see.
So I'm just
Wow.
learning how to use all the sewing machines, and I just
Oh,
want to
that's
make sure that
cool.
that the work's quality, it's not going to fall apart later on or something like that.
Are you going to be in Tucson in January? Will you be with your collection of hats and jewelry in Tucson, or what are you thinking? Where can people find your
I
hats?
don't know. I'm not really thinking that far about Tucson.
Okay.
I haven't done Tucson in a couple of years, so Tucson
Yeah.
might be off the plate again this year. It might be. I might go and visit friends and walk around. But yeah, it's probably for anything business wise. I probably won't be in Tucson this year. I still have to kind of get my bearings on this home studio. I got a few other things I got to take care of. I have something coming up that's kind of my tools. I'm thinking about licensing my tools to a manufacturer. So
Oh,
there's a lot of back end work on that and getting the
yeah.
tools ready, the designs ready, stuff like that. So that's my main.
Cool. Oh my gosh, I love that for you. It's like we can always use, some just unusual tools. I have your plastic bezel setter that rocks. So that's pretty cool.
So we're in my studio right now. This is my polishing station, rock polishers, jewelry polishers, rolling mills. And there's much more to the left over here. But my current studio now is actually in my home. So I came back to my beginnings. I first started working in my home when I first started metalsmithing. And then I had a few studios. I was gradually moving. So I got a small studio, like I think it was 6-7 years ago. And then I got a bigger studio as I started teaching. And then I got an even bigger studio. So my last studio was very large. It was a large teaching studio and tool making studio, and my own work and gallery. I recently moved out of that studio because the rent was so much, and that was during COVID, and it was, I was paying all this money for my rent and utilities. So I recently closed down that studio and I moved back home. I got rid of all my overhead. So all my, all the insurance policies and all the utilities that I was paying, the rent, the lease. I didn't own the building, so I was leasing it, and I came back home. So now I'm just in my living room, which is probably it's like 1/8 the size of my old studio, and it works. I just took all the tools that I use on a regular basis, and I crammed them into this small space, which is my old living room. And then I have a space outside, which is like an old rundown shed where I have a lot of like my dirty tools, like uh, you know the band saws and other rock polishers and things that make a lot of dust. Those are all out there. So it's nice. I don't have to drive very far to work. I literally just put on my shoes and walk from my bedroom to my living room. And my wife works from home also now, so she's the next room over. So we're together, pretty much all day long.
Oh.
Yeah, it's kind of nice, except when I take too long for lunch or.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that. It's a thing of, I think for me too, it's like COVID started a lot of us thinking about coming closer to home and, just looking at our budgets, like what kind of crazy things, expenses that aren't necessary and living life a little simpler.
Yeah, and I think having a studio at home, it's keeping me focused on the art aspect of what I do. It's keeping me present
Yes.
in the art. In my other studio, I had all this equipment, and it's like to justify having that space, I was like, I got to make tools, I got to teach,
Yeah.
I got to blah blah blah. Well, that taking me away from my true calling, I think, is to be an artist, to be true to art and make art. And my pieces, I call them art pieces. They're, to me, they're little miniature sculptures.
Yeah.
So working in my home studio like this keeps me true to. It's much easier to stay closer to the art aspect of it, as opposed to a manufacturer or a videographer or. Yeah, and that's who I want to be. That's what I want to do. I want to stick true.
Oh, I love that. So Robert's in the part of the book that is a lot about scrap, even though, it's like scrap, can be so sophisticated and interesting. And even in the last time right before COVID, when I was up in Milan Jewelry Week, it's like the pieces that people loved were scrappy pieces, cagey pieces, wiry, half melted, half, because it's really, in this day and age, manufacturing is so easy. How interesting is it to see an artist that's really putting together something that has the flaws?
Yeah, most of my pieces, I'm looking at, I have a pile of jewelry sitting here.
Oh, show.
Most of my jewelry is, they're almost all pieces have scrap in them. I used to take my scraps and I used to turn them in and have them refined down and get credit for new sheet, new wire. But nowadays I don't do that. So all my scraps get recycled into either granules, water casts, discs, or I'll just take random things and melt them into ingots and then facet them into crystal shapes. Almost every piece has some sort of scraps in it or some sort of found object. I have this case next to me here. It's just got all kinds of, pieces that were halfway done or weren't quite right. And I have, just random, artifacts and things like that I toss into my work.
Then what type of tips would you give to people starting off building their jewelry or into finding their own way or their voice or their, like, what type of tips would you give?
I guess the first thing I would say is to not be afraid. Don't be afraid of failure. Don't be afraid of if people are going to like it. Don't be afraid of melting something. Don't be afraid of damaging a piece of silver. A lot of people they're afraid of melting their pieces. It's silver. It can be melted and remelted. It can be remelted and melted, 100,000 times. You'll probably lose it's alloy. You might start losing some of the copper out. It might turn into fine silver if you keep doing it over and over again. But yeah, don't be afraid. That was the biggest thing for me. In the beginning, I was afraid because I was on a budget. I could only afford so much silver, blah, blah, blah. And I understand that. But the silver can always be, rehammered, remelted, re-rolled. Scratches are beautiful. Little nicks, things like that. Don't be afraid of it not becoming what you imagined it to be, what you envisioned it to be. Be able. Here we go. Here's the best tip I can give somebody.
Okay.
If you make something and it doesn't turn out exactly the way you thought it was going to look like, or even in the process, step back, look at it from a different angle and a different perspective, and give it a different voice, or look at it in a different way. You know what I mean? Because I do that. That's constantly done in my work. My work, it never turns out exactly how I thought it was going to be. But if I can step back, look at it from a different perspective and enjoy it from that perspective and give it a different voice and different meaning, to it.
How do you do that? What do you use? Do you walk around the block and come back, or do you like sleep on it? What do you do for that?
Yeah, sometimes I'll go outside and I'll look at rocks. I'll look at, trees, nature. I'll take a hike. I'll put it down, set it aside, and I'll work on something else.
Okay.
Times, because there were times when I was a little bit grumpy, where I've smashed the pieces or broken the pieces. Just take a torch to them and just melt them into a ball. I don't do that anymore. I just set them aside and give them a little bit of time to breathe, like a fine wine. Open it up, let it breathe a little bit, let it find its fruitiness and its whatever the term.
Oh my gosh.
And then just come back to it, and respect it for what it is, and and just rework it later on. You might need a little filing, you might need a couple little extra accoutrements added to it, but just find the beauty in what it is. And then if you keep doing that, eventually you'll learn from your mistakes. You'll learn from the things that you didn't like, things that you do like. You'll toss out the things you don't like anymore and hold on to the things you do like, and you'll just add that to your bag of tricks. And same thing with being a human being. You find what you like about yourself as you grow. You get rid of the things that don't work for you anymore, keep the things that do work for you, and move on. So
Perfect. Oh my gosh. Well, your authenticity is contagious and it's amazing. And I really, as I'm sitting here today, being able to spend some time with you, like, I'm really realizing, what a big part of intentional metalsmithing and this, direction of thinking of really just being yourself and your work and how you originally came to this beautiful look that no one else had, and now that you've went through a lot of changes and COVID, it's gonna, it's really interesting to see your hats and, I know you're going to continue on with your authentic work, and your work doesn't stay the same when you're authentic. So we're going to be watching Robert's progress, and there's no way that his work will be the same as prior to COVID, and it's like growing, and it's going to morph and it's going to breathe, because I can see just by the way you're talking, how much you're changing and growing. And, and he's exactly right. Like, listen to that. It's like, he's saying, it's the same, his work is the same thing as him as a human being. It's the same, You're not hiding anything. You're not trying to be something that you're not. You're being you.
Yeah.
Yay! Bravo!
Can I show you one piece that I do with all scraps? I just remembered it's behind me.
Okay. Yes, we do.
So this one is made with all scraps, and I can send you a picture if you want to post it. This
Yes,
is,
we would. Oh my God, that is fabulous, Robert. We would love to see it.
so there's thousands and thousands of pieces in this, little pieces, and they're all scraps. So all the water,
Oh my God, Robert.
all the
Yes.
water casts are melting the scraps. All of these crystalline structures, they have about a couple hundred pieces of scraps in each crystal structure.
That, and is that a gem on top?
Yeah, this is a pink tourmaline.
Oh my God, that is fabulous. I really want to see that. Maybe we could post that like with your interview. That's beautiful. Wow.
Yeah,
I'm so glad you're getting more time at home, you know, in
Yeah.
your home studio. Fabulous. And that one you just you didn't solder any of that. It's all fused.
It's mostly fused. It's probably 95% fused, and there's probably a couple solder joints in there. Not a couple, there's probably a dozen solder joints, but like out of the thousands of little components, like all the little granules and all pieces of square wire,
Yeah,
they're all fused.
oh my God. Oh, thank you so much, Robert. It's really nice to hear and see what you're doing. That piece is superb and magnificent. So yes, we definitely are going to need a photo of that. So I'm so grateful that you were here today, and I'm so grateful that you're in the book. And
when it comes to Instagram, I know that you were impersonated by a scammer and lost your Instagram account, and really had to start over from that. And I do use you as a kind of an example when I talk to my students in my business classes and say, you know, you can't just have Instagram, you need to also have other ways of reaching your audience. What are some, you know, what was kind of your experience with that, and maybe some ways you do things differently on Instagram?
Oh yeah, so when that happened, they didn't hack me, they impersonated me. So they took screenshots of my work. By the time I caught it, it was probably 25 pieces they screenshot, and then they took a screenshot of my face, and they started a new Instagram with a very similar name to mine. And when I notified Instagram, they shut down the account, but they also shut down my account. I wasn't able to get it back. At that point, I had about close to 9,000 followers, and that was the main way that I conducted a lot of my business, was through Instagram. When I lost 9,000 followers. I'm back up to like maybe 3,000 or something like that, but 3,000 true followers. So I lost all the fluff followers. All my true followers came back, but that was due because I had my Facebook account. And my Facebook account, I had a big email list. So I collected emails over the years, all my classes, all my workshops, all my sales. I had an email list that I kept and I maintained. And then I notified everybody that I started a new account on my Facebook page and through my email list and through my website. And then I gradually got back my true followers. So with Instagram, when I first started, I started doing all these little tricks to try to get more followers. There was all these little tricks to do to get more followers. Well, I did that. Well, they weren't true followers. They weren't purchasing from me. They weren't taking classes from me. They weren't commenting. They weren't blah, blah, blah. So it didn't really hurt my business. Even though I lost those thousands of followers in the beginning, I looked at my sales and my revenue, and it didn't change. It stayed the same. So I realized that I just got rid of the fluff. And for me, a lot of that fluff sometimes actually was to get rid of that fluff. It was actually better because some of that fluff was eating into my time management. So you get a lot of questions, you get a lot of comments, and I was constantly on social media answering, responding, blah, 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 blah. And it was for stuff that wasn't really generating revenue. And when that went away, I found I had more free time. I had more time to work. I had more time to manage my business. And it was actually kind of a blessing in disguise. But now for a while after that, what I did to circumvent that is I put a watermark on some of my images, really close. I didn't like it, but I would put a watermark next to my images. So if they copied it, my true Instagram name would be right next to my image. I kind of backed away from that lately, but I don't post a whole lot anymore on Instagram and Facebook.
Oh,
Yeah,
you're kind of in is that because you're in a lull period right now of
I'm in a bit of a lull.
rebuilding yourself? You're
Yeah,
rebuilding yourself.
that's
It sounds
that's
to me.
exactly why. Yeah, so
Right.
I'm in a bit of a lull. I'm a bit of reconstructing myself,
Yes.
and I just don't. Yeah, I don't, because it got a bit addicting. Also, I was on social media quite a bit,
Yeah.
and it kind of I'd open up a doorway, and I would just kind of go down this path of just and just being on it too much. So I'm very cautious about how much I'm on social media now. When I do post things, when I do again, I'll be a little more meticulous about how I post things like that, images and things that are, I don't want stolen. But yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you. It's awesome to hear your story. I have a couple of your pieces. One of them I bought because I saw all the little steps that you posted on Instagram. You were like, every little part of the way you posted these little steps. So I'm like, oh my God, I have to have that. Because of the process,
You have like 2 pieces of mine, don't you?
I have like 3 or 4. Yeah.
4? Okay. I like to send some images, and I always like to see who.
I will. I totally will. Yeah, the one pendant I'm thinking of had all those little like strips all throughout, and then you framed it, and it had a big stone. It was just so cool to watch the process. So anyway, I just want to say thank you for showing up on Instagram and posting your stuff. I know it's not always rewarding, but we love to see it. So.
Oh, and I got one more thing to say about that.
Yeah.
So on the social media, to protect myself, I think the way I'm going to go on this next, when I start getting back into it, is I'm going to be doing more reels as opposed to images. So reels are getting more popular anyway. It's a better way to get, you get more views that way and shares. And it's, for me, I can show more of what I'm doing, but I don't know, I'm not for sure, but I would guess it'd be harder for them to copy a reel, if they even can copy a reel somehow and share it. An image, they can just do a screenshot, right? But I don't think they can steal a reel unless they hack you. So it's much harder to impersonate me if I'm doing more reels or videos as opposed to images.
I'm really glad for the interview. Then, the more I talk to you, I see like what a big part you are of just this, whole movement and voice that I'm trying to project and really teach people, really help our people that come to us with classes and, talk about finding their voice and talk about wanting to do what they want to do, whether it's going to be, there's room for everybody. And it's like leader, someone who has a strong voice and a leader like you and, people in the people that I chose in the book, it's just really important. You're finding a way to live your life really happy and you're matching your work to yourself. And it's like, if everyone can be content and, just joyful with what they do, our world is going to be a safer place, So I'm always grateful to see people and you very happy,
Yeah.
So good for you. I'm excited. So yay.